Everyone, welcome to this session. Our chapter is human coordination. And today let's see these drugs and the drugs abuse relating to the nervous system. So far in our previous videos, we covered the sense organs. So that was our last subtopic which we were discussing. So today let's move on how these drugs and the drugs abuse, they can be related to the nervous coordination or nervous system. So we'll start discussing about the drugs. A drug, by definition, is simply any chemical substance, natural or synthetic that has no psychological effects on humans or other animals. So drugs can be any kind of chemical substance that can either be synthetic or just occurred naturally that has these kinds of psychological effects on humans or other animals. The foods are generally simply excluded from this definition in spite of their psychological effects on the animal species. So foods, they cannot be known as drugs. So they are excluded because they are the ones that provide like these kinds of various important nutrients required for the body. Now, most drugs are both useful and harmful, may affect the body, especially the brain. Here, so we see how the drugs, they can affect the nervous system or the nervous coordination by altering the nerve cells' natural reaction to these chemicals, or by mimicking the body's normal compounds. So what the drugs do, they can affect the normal functioning of the nervous system, specifically the brain, whereby they alter some of the nerve cells' natural reactions to these kinds of chemicals. It also, they can alter or mimic the body's normal reactions to various compounds. So that's how the drugs, they can react, or how drugs, they can cause some kind of impact, or they can affect the normal body actions. Uh, some drugs, they slow down the passage of stimuli by affecting the nerve cell membranes, and other, they act like in neurotransmitters, perhaps passing stronger or longer lasting impulses. So what the drugs do, they can also slow down the passage of these stimuli that can be observed, or that can be uh, generate that can be obtained by the various these receptors by affecting the nerve cells membranes, and they can also act as these neurotransmitters. Also, perhaps they lead to the stronger passing or just longer passing impulses toward these kinds of nerves. So that's what also these drugs, they can do. Now, as such, they may alter the way sensory information is processed, or they can also affect the thinking process. So that's what the drugs, they can alter. So here you see the relation of how the use of drugs, they can have some kind of impact to the nervous coordination. Moving on. Stimulants are drugs which they speed up the action of the brain. Take an example, this caffeine found in tea and coffee. So stimulants, they are example of some kinds of drugs which they can have some kind of serious impact to the brain, as these stimulants, they speed up the action of the brain. Example of such stimulants as drugs are these like uh, caffeine that is found in tea and coffee. So that's clear. Now, sedatives, these are just drugs which slow down the action of the brain. Take an example, alcohol. So you see, there are these kinds of drugs we've seen. Those, the first one, that example, caffeine, they speed up. Those are stimulants, but sedatives, these are the ones that they slow down the action of the brain. Take an example, the alcohol. Uh, Even one alcoholic drink will have some effect on the brain, so that has to be noted that alcohol is some kind of a drug that can affect the normal functioning of the brain. Now let's see the various proper ways of handling and using the drugs. Here are some of them. First, you have to know that when using and handling drugs, the following are just precautions that may be, or they must be observed when trying to use, or when you're handling drugs. You should observe the following precautions. The first one, that you have to avoid taking any drugs without diagnosing the disease or any prescriptions by the doctor. So prescriptions from the doctor and diagnosis is very crucial when you are trying to take any kind of a drug, since just to get clear instructions on how you can consume or how you can handle such kinds of drugs. The other one, that always stay away from the peer pressures and drug addicts to avoid copying their bad habits. There are these drug addicts, like peers who they just influence others just to take those drugs that they can have very serious impact and they can lead to such kind of bad habits. So this is just a precaution to those peers, just to stay away from those peer pressures, which are very negative peer pressures. Another, report any case of drug abuse or trafficking to consider authorities. Is just a normal one, as you can observe it, just to stay precautious to these drugs. If one feels addicted, he or she should seek advice from health officials. So the health officials are just required to observe a person if he or she feels like some kind of addictions towards certain kinds of drugs. So drugs, they can be very addictive, so that have to be taken into hindrance. Another, never take a dose more or less than what has been prescribed by the doctor. So taking less or more than what has been prescribed by the doctor can lead to some kind of serious effect from using such kind of drugs. Complete the prescribed dose even after you start feeling well or after the symptoms of the disease has been disappeared. So that has to be crucial taken when you are taking the drugs. Make sure the dose is completed, just to stay away from any side effects from less using of such kind of drugs or prolonged use of such drugs. So you have to complete the prescribed dose even after feeling well. Keep all drugs out of reach of children and drug addicts, as they can consume these drugs and they can affect them, specifically their nervous systems or their nervous coordination. Let's discuss about drug addiction. Drug addiction is simplifies to compulsive and repeated use of the increasing amounts of drugs with the appearance of withdrawal symptoms when drug use ceases. So drug addiction, this is just repeated use of this increase the amount of drugs just without any prescription, as and with some kind of appearances of withdrawal symptoms. These symptoms are the symptoms which show that, example, when a person, if tries to leave those drugs, might feel very bad, like you might feel cannot survive without them. So that's drug addiction. While drug use often begins as a way to seek recreation, the addictive properties of the drug make an addictive crave for it permanently. So, drug addiction, yes, it might not have started as just to be addicted, but it might be just started, might have just been started just for the way to seek recreation. But the addictive properties of certain kind of these drugs, they make an addictive crave for these kinds of drugs permanently. So that has to be noted. This compulsion is uncontrollable and may interfere with the person's everyday life. The drug addiction, even when the effects of drugs are damaging to a person's body and relationships with friends, family members, and co-workers, the constant need for the drug often overcomes any rational thinking. So drug addictions may lead to overcoming any rational thinking, and the person might not think straight because of using such kind of drugs. Now, the human body has its own ability to produce some chemicals for its proper functioning. The continued use of the drug suppresses the body's ability to produce these chemicals or diminishes its production, because these chemicals are replaced by such kind of a drug. For this reason, the body thus uses the drug as a substitute for its own natural chemicals. Since these chemicals are no longer produced, the body perceives that it needs the drug for its functioning. So any kinds of withdrawal from these kinds of drugs may lead that a person can feel like he cannot live without them. So therefore, a person just craves for the drug so much that he or she feels cannot live without taking these drugs. At this level, the drug abuser becomes addicted to the given drug. Now, this is what we call the drug addiction. So that's all I have for this session. I hope that's all clear. We've discussed the all this about drugs, how they are related to the nervous coordination. We've seen precautions on how to handle and use the drugs, and we've briefly discussed about the drug addiction. We'll discuss further in our next chapter. I mean, our next session. This drug abuse, various subtopics related to drug abuse. I hope that's all clear, and thank you.